Excuse number 8 that airlines use to justify why they don't take action on contrails. There are no incentives for voluntary action. Contrail warming and non-CO2 emissions are not included in the Science-Based Target Initiative goals for aviation. So we cannot use contrail warming savings in our climate target calculations and reporting. We are not incentivized to take any voluntary action.
So this is definitely somewhat of an issue, although I think that some of the framing is a little bit of a problem. As we discussed earlier, contrails and contrail mitigation is in addition to CO2. So I think some airlines want to see their kind of trial or other action on contrails to reduce in some way their other activities they've agreed to under voluntary targets. And I think that some airlines have perhaps seen that the cost of contrail avoidance is substantially less than that of carbon reduction and are therefore maybe seeing, well, if this was included, then we could maybe get around some of our kind of voluntary carbon reductions, which are turning out to be rather expensive. That's really critical in both this and in compulsory policy. I've always been a very strong advocate that you should never allow contrail avoidance to be tradable with carbon. They behave very differently, and it creates a really problematic market because contrail avoidance costs on a kind of, if you make it on a, say, GWP 100 basis, dollar per ton sorts of numbers, just like tiny fractions, less than 1% of what SAFs, for instance, cost. And so obviously airlines, if that market was open, would only invest in contrail avoidance and would just leave all their carbon targets alone for decades. So we can't have that tradability between the two. If SBTI were to bring in non-CO2 effects like contrails into targets, it would be an additionality to those targets. I'm not sure airlines would be overly enthused about that, given that I think they're under big pressure with their carbon targets. And I think it's quite tricky in the short term because what we need right now is lots of engagement with airspace trials. We need to start figuring out how it will be operationalized. And so in the very short term, I don't think there is much credit for that other than from a kind of staying stakeholders that we're doing the right thing in trying to progress this forward.